Hey y'all, are you curious what the endgame of Final Fantasy XIV is like? In this video I will show you FF14's Extreme Trial known as the Cinder Drift Extreme, also known as Ruby Weapon X. Using footage from my stream fighting this bad boy, we score this fight in terms of music, visuals, difficulty and mechanics, while pinpointing interesting parts of the fight, leading up to our final verdict. Let's check it out. Let's talk about the visuals first. There's a lot to like in this fight. The model upgrade from the Final Fantasy VII model pays homage, but the new version really looks fantastic. I also really like the detail of that eye blink in the cinematic. In the fight you see the boss dashing and slashing around, which looks really cool and fits this weapon's overall theme. Checking out one of the more interesting mechanic reels, this one you see here just blends so nicely in terms of color with the ruby mines everywhere. We'll talk more in depth about this one later. If there's one thing I would comment on negatively for this half of the fight, it is the somewhat bland grey background. On to the second half, where the phase transition is a cool cutscene with just the right amount of uncanny valley. The background of this half showing the meteor falling down fits the theme really well. The upgraded model is kinda edgy, which I like. Finally, this death scene really just brings it all together, just look at it. With that, I can't do anything else than give this an S for visuals. Next we will jump into mechanics and difficulty, and man, there is a lot to talk about here. Just to warn you, there's a lot of my fails incoming in the footage. First thing that really stood out to me is the spirals of death going out, where you need to pick a position relative to the 3 telegraphs in the center. But the spirals themselves aren't telegraphed. This would have been a decent mechanic on its own. However, there are also Magitech turrets shooting lines at you, and the timing is generally in such a way that they're shooting you while you take your position. Therefore, you need to bait those lines away from your safe spot first as a group and then move into the small safe spot. Judging by the amount of deaths I had, this indeed took me quite a while to get down. I really love this mechanic. The next mechanic reel that I really appreciate is Raven's Claw into either liquefaction or undermine. First, the boss will put its claws into the ground and cast Raven's Claw, spawning the cracks on the floor you see here. At the end of his cast time, the ends of these cracks will explode together with his hitbox for some massive AoEs. Afterwards, he will randomly choose either liquefaction or undermine. For the one you need to stand on the spawned cracks, and for the other you need to stand away from those cracks. I got confused so many times here since I did not realize Raven's Claw was an independent mechanic of the two following it. Afterwards you need to contend with these ruby spheres where every player will spawn these red mines in succession. This means you need to pre-assign positions for each player. This is still fine when the cast is undermine because you have some space to walk around, but it can get really hectic when the cast is liquefaction, as shown here. So after the phase transition, there are 2 more mechanic reels that stood out to me. Firstly, the overall add phase. Each player can only hit one of the adds due to a debuff, which makes that add immune or not. There are 2 creepy phases with tethers that need to be led into the boss. Also, both adds either cast a donut AoE or a point blank AoE. And since both adds can do either of those at any time, they need to be tanked as far away from each other as possible. There's a lot of damage going out, with DPS players getting some AoE circles on them as well. This combination of mechanics can lead to a lot of movement and some stress on the healers. This mechanic reel at the end of the fight, spawning meteors, is done brilliantly. Everyone gets a number above its head with a number of blood droplets which will spawn a proximity marker, followed by a meteor in the order of the number above your head. The 8th meteor is spawned closer to the boss on purpose because of the knockback mechanic that follows afterwards. Right after that, you need to stand behind the meteor to avoid taking damage. So either you position yourself in such a way that you can knock back just behind the meteor, or you move behind the meteor and use a knockback immunity. Because the edge of the platform is lava, this requires more precision than anticipated. Finally, the meteor explodes again, so you need to move away quickly after the mechanic is resolved. If you have enough people alive, especially the 2 tanks and healers, you should have a kill in your hands. Even though there are some less interesting parts in this fight, there are some really cool mechanic reels in here, but I'm not completely blown away. So in terms of mechanics, this is going to be an A for me. So next, some comments on the difficulty curve. I think this is an ideal place for these kinds of trials, but the fight gets quite a bit easier after the transition in my opinion. This is also a fight where they save you after the transition, so you don't have to go back to the first half of the fight, and this makes it a lot more forgiving. I don't mind it per se, the saving part, because I think it saves a lot of time as well, but due to the difficulty gradient before and after that halfway point, it feels a bit weird. So because of that, an A for me as well. So let's jump into the tune. Due to the 2 distinct halves of the fight, we have 2 different tracks to analyze. The ultimate theme from A Realm Reborn is one of my favorite tracks, and this remix really does its job well. I like the classic orchestral version better from the actual ultimate fight, but it is a very cool mix and it blends into the fight and the boss model really well. Just have a listen. Now the second track is a mixed bag for me. It simply doesn't do it for me as much as the track in the first half, but it blends in really nicely again with the fight and the model and the surroundings. All in all, even though Ruby's Weapon's music was close to an A, for me it's gonna be a B. Let's put this all together. Tallying up, this leads to a final score of A for the Cinder Drift Extreme. I think Ruby Weapon holds a respectable place within the Shadowbringers Extreme Trials. Having come out with patch 5.2, which was the previous patch, the difficulty as of now is slightly easier, and it provides an excellent entry into Shadowbringers rating. With that, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite mechanic for this particular fight is. Would you like to follow me discovering the world of Final Fantasy XIV raiding? I am streaming that and some of the retro Final Fantasy games on Twitch. Check the description below for that. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content.